into data next week. We've got head of analytics from Kin Insurance talking about starting your you want to start analytics at your company. You don't have to be a data scientist. Like, where do you start? Who do you talk to? Who are the stakeholders? What stuff should you measure? How do you turn that into money or insights? And then on top of that, we've got someone from Slalom coming in the week after. When we do this, we're going to be doing it every week, so feel free to follow up. On top of that, the way our bread and butter, the way we make money, in addition to events like this, is we have small intimate courses. So these are hard capped at 15 people, so really small. All we like to say expert led. What I mean is practitioner led. So these are all folks people like our guest speakers. These are people who do this for a living every single day and then come teach in the evening. So not some PhD like we all had it in college. Someone who's never done this before. This is someone who does this every single day. So we've got both a couple classes coming up. One, of course, the Python course, and that's for someone who's never coded before. You want to dive into Python. You're thinking about data science. This, kind of dip your toes in the water. You'll get those foundations. And then later on in the month, we're launching again our data class. That one again is for someone who you're not a data scientist. You might be a marketing manager, or like me, I was an operations manager. You might be in finance, and you're thinking, okay, well, Excel is great, but what's next? How do I kind of take this to the next level? And so similar, practitioner-led, you learn things like SQL, Tableau, how to start your question, and you walk away, of course, with a work product. You want everyone to say, here is what I did, and not just I got a certificate. More importantly, here's what I can show you, and with a Tableau public link and that sort of thing. And of course, they all come with certificates, and also we record every session. So if you can't make it, or you want to just rewatch something, we have that available too. Aside from that, if everyone, I saw you guys joining in the chat, for everyone who wants to really just get together and connect with other folks who, at this point, we've got about 7,000 people in our community between all of our events and online and whatnot. So we recently launched a Slack channel. So feel free to join, throw your resume in there. As you guys saw from the chat, there are lots of people who come here, everything from, of course, plenty of recruiters, folks who are at different parts of the business, of course, more data-focused people as well. But just a good opportunity to kind of meet people, see what they do, find opportunities, etc. And lastly, feel free to tweet us. We're at Promotable.io, and use hashtag #BecomePromotable. With that, Annie, take it away.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining, and thanks, Aaron, for inviting me. It'd be great to see you all in person, but it's cool that we have this tool so that we can interact virtually. Is my sound okay? Can everyone hear me? I'll take that as a yes. Great. Thank you. Cool. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing your backgrounds. It's really good context. There's a pretty big diversity of backgrounds here. I hope to be able to answer some of your questions. I'm going to start out and just sort of give you the story of my background and how I got into data science, and then sort of give you some of my takeaways that it would have been helpful for me to know when I was starting out. And then we'll have a Q&A section where you can feel free to fire questions at me. I always found, and I still find, interacting with other data scientists really useful. So yeah, with that, I'll sort of just share my screen because I have a few slides to share with you. Let's see. All right, can everyone see that okay? Okay, cool. And if you're on the phone, don't worry about it. You'll still be able to follow along. So as Aaron mentioned, I'm currently a data scientist at a global manufacturing company that makes building materials. It's called Knauf. It's based in Germany, but they just purchased USG, which is a US gypsum board. It's based in Chicago. As part of my current role, I do data science, but I also manage sort of larger data science projects because this company that I work for now is brand new to data science. They're trying to advance their analytics maturity, and they sort of just need a strategy for doing that. But let me tell you kind of like how I got to where I'm at right now. So, you know, I tried to make this plot for you so that you could kind of see a visual of how my trajectory into the data science world. Um, and so you'll see that it wasn't a linear path. Um, there's a lot of peaks and valleys to my journey. Um, didn't always think I was going to make it. And now I am here at the peak of my career. Just kidding. I would say there's probably many more valleys to come, but I think that in general, uh, there's just so much happening in the data science world, and there's so much change. And so I think I'll continue to learn and grow. And I don't think that, where I'm at now is necessarily permanent, but it's definitely exciting. It's an exciting time to be in this field. So I did want to kind of tell a few stories about this graph that might be helpful to some of you. Um, I started out, I majored in my undergrad in literature. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had, a ton of different jobs. Came out of college and worked at a few different nonprofits, and then I ended up working in sales at a global berry company. I don't know if you guys eat berries, Driscoll's berries, but they sell strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, and the like. And so I found myself working in sales there, and I wanted an edge. I wanted to go back to school, but at the time, I had no idea what data science was. I'd never even heard of it, to be honest. I'd never coded before. This was 2015, and I was looking at grad school programs and mostly MBA programs. And I kind of, someone emailed me this Master's of Data Science from Northwestern, but at the time it was called a Master's in Predictive Analytics. And yeah, I had no idea what predictive analytics really meant. Um, but I applied and I got into the program. I was living in California at the time. It was a remote program. So I said, yeah, I mean, it's Northwestern. Sounds like uh, a good thing to have on my resume, and sounds like I could learn a lot. So, I started this program, and I was working full time still in sales, and doing my master's in the evenings. Um, and I didn't even know what Python was. I'd never heard of it. So I sign up my first class, and they say, download Python. And I'm thinking, Python, oh, okay, must be a cool software where you push a button and it gives you an output, and super easy to use. Uh, little did I know that, you're actually like hard coding what you want to figure out. And so, um, so that was a learning experience. And I was halfway through my first quarter in this master's program, um, and I was in this group, and I had just failed my first exam. I'd gotten an F on the first exam, and I was in a group project. And I said to the members of my group, "Hey, do you guys know like any suggestions for how to learn how to code better? Because I don't like I've never coded before." And it seemed like a lot of my classmates were coming from a background of software engineering or engineering of some kind, electrical engineering, where they were a bit more technical and they had coding skills, and so they were more just coming into the sort of data science world. And so one of the members in my group said, hey, this program has really high attrition. It's only going to get harder, and you should really consider dropping out because um, if you don't know how to code, like, you're not going to make it. And I left the call and I was like, man, like, dang it, I'm spending all this money. Like, I should just drop out. Like, I'm only halfway through my first quarter, and this isn't really working out. And right after that, I got an email from someone else that was in my group that had been on the call listening in. And she said, don't drop out. It's you can find ways to learn how to code, and it's not a big deal. Like you'll be okay. So I ended up not dropping out, and I stayed in the program. I actually took most of my classes going forward with this person, this peer who had reached out to me because she had a little bit more background, and I was able to kind of collaborate with her and learn how to code with her. And I thought that that was important to tell you because um, I think in this world, a lot of the work is frustrating. It can be frustrating to learn some of the mathematical concepts, and it can also be frustrating to learn how to code if you've never coded before. Um, but the frustration is inherent to the work, and it's not a reason to stop going. So, another thing I wanted to point out is that as soon as I graduated from my master's, um, I was immediately kind of looking for a new job, and I got a job as a data scientist at Northrop Grumman. And on paper, that looks super shiny, right? It's like this big technical company, and I had the title of data scientist. But the caveat is that I didn't actually get hired as a data scientist at first. It was a title switch. So they hired me as something called a behavioral research scientist. And the lab that I was working for at the time was doing sort of like uh, work on large data sets of military service members. And so it was data science, but they just weren't calling it that yet. Um, they did end up calling it that while I was working there, but I applied there because it looked like something that would be valuable. And I think that's important too, because a lot of times when you're looking to break into this world, you go on Indeed or LinkedIn and you're searching for a very specific title. And that can be kind of hard sometimes because you never know what's going to kind of help you break into this world. It could be a role that's not titled data scientist, but you're going to be working with big data and you could gain a lot of great experience from that role. So I think um, that really taught me that. Another thing that I'll say about that role is that I didn't get the job because I was the smartest coder in the interview. I didn't get the job because uh, I had like really great statistical experience. I got that job because as a master's student, I had the opportunity to do a capstone project. And it just so happened that I did the capstone project with my peer, with one of my friends, using real data from a school district that was predicting dropout rates for students in that school district. And we went to the school, we acquired real data, signed a non-disclosure agreement and data sharing agreement. We pulled the real data for our project, and then we built like a really basic predictive model, a logistic regression model that helped them organize um, their students so that they could kind of track um, how their students were doing. And so when I went to Northrop Grumman and I applied and I interviewed for the job, I was able to present that very simple project to them. And so, like I said, if they had given me like a coding exam or a math exam, and they based my hiring on that, there's no way I would have gotten the job at that time because I had only had a year and a half worth of experience. But data science roles can often be about so much more than just the technical skill. There's a lot of well-roundedness, and it sounds like looking at your guys' backstories, there's a lot of diversity in where you come from. So don't undervalue that diversity. There's a lot of opportunity for people who have communication skills or who have already worked with a certain type of data before, like actuarial data or sales data or um, even like human behavior data. Um, so I'll point that out. Another thing that I'll point out before I kind of move forward is there's a lot of different angles that I've taken. So, Northrop Grumman, the client was the government. So, there was sort of this aspect of working for the government, and there was challenges associated with that. There, for a short time, I tried to make that project where I was looking at student data into a uh, oh, it looks like we have a hacker on our on our site. Anyway, ignore that. And let's see. So the startup kind of the startup kind of the startup world and like the larger organization is one angle that you can take. And then at Exelon, it was like another large enterprise. And then let's see. Lastly, hey Aaron, if you're on the line, um, is there anything that you could do about this?
Yeah, I see this too. I'm trying to get rid of it. I just that it's the same stuff here. So
Okay, no worries.
yeah, everyone just ignore it. I'm gonna try on my end try and get rid of some of it, but just please ignore this person.
Cool.
Let's continue.
No worries, no worries. Okay, cool. We'll keep going. I just closed out of that.
Whoa.
So, yeah, I think those are the main things that I wanted to point out about my background. Let me just go to the next slide. Okay, so here's my takeaways from this. Let's see. Okay, so I would say, like, I looked at when you guys were kind of posting some of your backgrounds. This is really relevant to that. So, like, make your path with data science your own. So, whatever you're doing right now, you're doing the right thing by trying, like by showing up here today. You're doing you're doing the right thing, and no one's story is going to look identical. So like I know, like I showed up at a conference at one point, and I like everyone at the conference had a PhD if they were a data scientist. And in my head I thought like, oh, in order to be a data scientist you have to have a PhD. And this was in like 2016. And within like, let's see, within like 3 months after that, I was a data scientist. And now, like, you can have a bachelor's degree, and you can get a title of data scientist. So I think that's kind of like something, just so everyone knows, as like a background. A lot of Zoom calls have been getting hacked this week. So that's kind of what's happening right now. So just ignore it. It's like someone trying to instigate. Um, let's see. And some of you have asked questions, and I'll answer them. If I forget, just remind me. So yeah, make your own path. You like there's definitely qualifications. Like you can go to job descriptions and look for specific qualifications that they're asking for, and that's a really good way to sort of see what kind of skill sets you need by going to a job description, looking for those qualifications and finding out how you can kind of learn about them. So, like, Kevin just asked, what are the best ways to learn languages like Python? Um, so, like, for me, like, there's a lot of different ways. Coursera is great. DataCamp is great. I like with any type of learning to start small. So, like, start with like, don't just, like I I don't know if I would advise just going into a master's program like I did. It's great to work with companies like Promotable that where you can kinda, like, learn about the topic, like yeah, like Vince is saying, like, data camp, the best languages to learn, is Python and R, I would say right now, because those are kind of like the most standard ones that are used in the industry, and it'll give you a good background. But it also just depends on how you learn. If you're not good at learning online, definitely find a way of learning where you're surrounded by peers because that will help you. Like going to a boot camp, um, you'll be interacting with people and you can kind of collaborate with people to work on projects. I know some people like to learn code just by like getting like just kind of applying it. So for some people, like what you could do is literally go on Kaggle. I'll post on, I want to post on the chat a resource that I really like that has a ton of great code in it. Um, it's on Kaggle. Oops, I sent it to Aaron, but so I'll have Aaron send out these resources after. But
Yeah, a follow-up email with all the resources and the slide deck as well.
cool, great. Yeah, so like on Kaggle, there's this data science glossary where you can look up any technique that you want to learn, and then you can look up project examples where someone walked through that thing. So, say you want to learn how to predict sales, you could literally find an entire notebook of Python code where someone already did that. This is not a field where plagiarism is a thing, I guess I would say. Like, I copy people's code all the time. And in fact, that's how you learn code the best because you're kind of figuring it out through repetition and kind of seeing how someone else did it. Let me see what else I have on here. Also, I think it's great to figure out what content area you're interested in, and it's okay to move around a little bit, but it does matter. Like, there's tons of data scientist jobs out there right now, and you might not be interested in all of them. I know that like I get pinged a lot on LinkedIn for insurance jobs or jobs in insurance companies, kind of predicting like premiums and stuff like that. And the topic just doesn't interest me, so it can definitely impact like your overall satisfaction based on what content area that you're interested in. So if you're already coming from, you know, um, like operations, you might be interested in like a manufacturing company or something like that. Um, let's see. If you don't understand something, I would say don't assume that that's the only way that you can understand it. There's such a large proliferation of data science tools, and I think like if you don't understand something one way, it doesn't mean that it's the only way to understand it. Let me see. I'm gonna answer some of these questions here. Yes, there are many languages, and the programmers sometimes know only a fraction of what he wishes they would know. Yeah, that's a good point. There's definitely, I think there's a wide, there's so many people that are kind of like in the initial stages of learning how to code right now, um, because there's a lot of languages out there, and there's a lot of people that are just new to it. So that's definitely going to happen. The public sector, there's a ton of different jobs in data science. They might not always be called data scientist, but there's a ton of data that the government works with in its databases. The military is a perfect example of that, but there's also like I worked for a little bit as a data analyst at a county office of education, um, and there was just so much opportunity there. I would say in the government, it's hit or miss because a lot of times there's a lot of bureaucracy behind those jobs. So sometimes um, they don't have the latest technology available or the latest budget to get that technology. Um, so I know, like with my job at Northrop, just the nature of the security of the job was that we had to operate within a highly secure VPN, and so that was definitely a challenge because um, we couldn't get like they wanted to migrate to AWS, which would have been really awesome because there's a lot of skills that you can learn in AWS, but um, they just couldn't. It was like a 2-year project versus like if I jumped to another company that was more flexible and already learning or they were already using AWS, it was a lot more valuable. Let's see. If I learn Python or R by myself, what would be the best idea to prove my ability to employers? I would say definitely a project. Yeah, having a project as kind of proof and um, putting that like I think if you're so like for example, I've interviewed at Amazon before for one of their data science roles. Actually, I've interviewed at Amazon 2 times, and their interview is a technical interview, so you're live coding. Um, so, like, it kinda just depends on what kind of company you're applying for. A lot of companies do have, like, technical interviews where you have to figure some sort of code out in front of them, um, but other companies, they're hiring more based on your own understanding of a project and what you did. Um, so it's kind of just like it depends what angle you're taking with that question. So either you're kind of um, understanding what are the basics of Python and R that you might be asked in an interview, or you could actually, do a project on Kaggle or with a publicly available data set that would kind of show your knowledge. Let's see, what's the difference between a data scientist and a data engineer? That's a great question. I think that's a question that a lot of employers are wondering too, and I think it's slowly evolving where eventually um, I think that this will happen. I'm not sure, but I think a lot of data scientists will have the skills of data engineers and vice versa. Right now, there's still a pretty high need for a separation, but in general, data engineers are a little bit more operational. Um, they're focused on the infrastructure, data quality. So, a lot of organizations have collected large amounts of data over time, and the data engineer is responsible for the ETL process of transferring that data into a data science environment and kind of monitoring the data. Whereas a data scientist is more focused on deriving insights from from the data. So each of them have to have a good relationship because the data engineer has to understand how to um, make that data ready for a data scientist to clean and use. And then a data scientist has to understand um, the quality of the data and how it got there. So in turn, they're both important. They're both important roles and great skills to have. Let's see, money, quality of life, and government versus industry. Yep, totally. There's definitely a trade-off. How often do you reference materials online to code something? I feel like I'm always looking something up because I don't remember. Yes, all the time. So, this is my issue with technical interviews where you're live coding. I personally don't believe that, like, the purpose of coding is to, like, memorize things off the top of your head. I think the whole purpose of open source languages is that people are sharing and, people are designing things to be shared. So if you're looking define a function or learn how to make a plot, um, you can almost guarantee that someone's done it already or done something like that. And it's so I'm all about going on to Stack Overflow and using someone else's materials. That's why people post questions. That's why people use those tools. So I'm all for it. But I don't know. There may be other opinions on that one out there, but I reference materials all the time. Let's see. Okay, expanding on data opportunities for education, school-based. Oh, great. Okay, speech language pathologist, but I deal with a lot of data. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think there's such a huge opportunity in education, and I know that like there's a lot of companies like startups that are kind of like growing in that field right now, especially in the speech language pathologist field. Um, if I can think of some, I'll send them to Aaron. But I think like what I've heard is that that role is like at a lot of schools, the administration or school counselors are really overwhelmed by the amount of work that they have on their plates. And so the opportunity there, I think a lot of it is that they have to collect a ton of data on the students they work with. So there's a huge opportunity there for sure to kind of like build better data management systems and maybe make insights from the data on the students a little bit better. Um, let's see, are software packages like Tableau and Power BI also important to learn for data scientists? So I would say yes. I have definitely uh, gotten into Tableau and Power BI a little bit because when you're working at a big enterprise that has those type of licenses, they're gonna they're like a lot of enterprises will get confused about what a data scientist role is, and they'll say, "Hey, can you make this in Tableau? Isn't that what you do?" So it's definitely valuable skill, and it's useful too. I think there's a lot of ways to make data visualizations through Python libraries, but Tableau and Power BI are more drag and drop. So yeah, it's been super useful for me. My first month at my current job was finishing a Tableau project that a group had started, and I think like it was valuable to have that skill set. Let's see. What do you think is most important when looking for a job as a data scientist? Um, I think honestly, looking for a job as a data scientist, hmm, it's like it really is unique to where you're applying and what you want to get out of it because that's how you're gonna find the right role for you at that time. Um, you may yeah, I think it's just you're definitely gonna need some level of education to get a role as a data scientist, and you're gonna need some level of experience, but I think there's just a lot of ways to create that, and it doesn't have to be getting a master's degree. It can be. I think it's super valuable, to have, like, a heavy math background, if you can get that, but, um, if your way to do it based on your budget and your time is to, um, learn a bunch of different applicable techniques in Kaggle or through other various forms, I think that's also super valuable. Yes, yep, engineering. Yeah, engineering is a lot of data manipulation. Okay, so while playing with languages like Python, what do you believe might be the best ways to learn the right statistical methods to apply the situation? K-means clustering versus other clustering techniques. Um, okay, so I would say with that question about the best way to learn the right statistical methods, there's a book. It's The Elements of Statistical Learning, and I'll send that to Aaron as well as the same authors wrote a book called Applied Predictive Modeling. Those two books, I would say, are the best books for um, visualizing the math behind some of those methods because we're getting to a point where a lot of the libraries in Python and R will do all the math for you behind the functions. Um, so you don't have to have a crystal clear uh, understanding of what's happening, but it's definitely um, valuable to know what's happening so that you can explain it. You can kind of explain your results. So yeah, those two books are really good for understanding the statistical methods. And then if you haven't taken a basic statistics course on like Coursera or something like that, um, that's also a really good idea just so that you're familiar with the terminology um, behind it. Another one too that I took in my master's program is like linear algebra because you can understand like matrices. That's a good foundation for those. Um, yeah. Let's see. Are you aware of any projects or project categories someone who is an aspiring data engineer could do in order to help get a job? Um, hmm. I think that you could I would look at any type of project where you are pulling data from one place to another. So whether you're building an API to pull data from, like a good example is like what is it the weather the online weather database NOAA NOAA. That website has a bunch of data um, on weather from satellites in different areas. And what, for example, they have a free API and you could build out the code to pull that data into Python. And that would kind of show some of your experience. You could also, I think, AWS and some of the other products like it have the ability to create free accounts um, up to a certain amount of storage, and you could use some of the tools in there to build a um, build a line where you're transferring data from one place to another. Those are just some suggestions. I'm not a data engineer, so I don't know everything about that topic, but that would be my suggestion. Stack Overflow, yes, definitely. How do you get over the hump of lack of experience at the start of your job search? Um, I would say just dive in, like take roles that you um like I said, like don't limit yourself to the data scientist title. Um, just dive into a place where you're going to get experience hands-on working with data. So if the title is analyst, um, like don't be afraid to take that job because there's so many analyst positions right now that are basically bleeding into data science. Um, I know at my current company there's a bunch of analysts that are stuck in Excel, and if they could code in Python, they could do so much cool stuff. So I think um, that's huge. Um, let's see. What about librarianship as a background? I don't think that's limiting at all. I think that's I mean, I think I don't know much about librarianship, but um, I would imagine it's a lot to do with information science. So it sounds like you would have the perfect opportunity. Aaron, are we doing okay on time? I know that there's a lot more questions.
Yeah, as long as you're okay, I mean, I think we can easily go until 7 o'clock or so.
Cool, great. Do you recommend a data engineer learn Docker and AWS? Yes, definitely. I would say take it step by step. Um, you may not need to learn like Docker and AWS all at once, but um, like if you think about like the foundational skills of data engineering, you're definitely gonna want to know how to code. You're gonna want to know, um, let's see, you're gonna want to know how to work with large amounts of data. Um, so Docker and AWS are valuable skills for a data scientist, a solutions architect, or a data engineer. But number one, you're just going to want to have that basic experience of um, ETL and monitoring data quality, and then also understanding what can go wrong um, in a pipeline and how to like fix that with engineering. Let's see, as an actuary, understanding the meaning of the numbers is the most important thing, I believe. But it sounds like understanding the languages is the most important for the data scientist, if I understand right. Um, I would say no, like not necessarily. Um, in data science, understanding the languages is definitely important, but the numbers is huge because at the end of the day, you're always going to be communicating your results to a stakeholder, and they're going to ask all kinds of questions, and you're going to want to be able to give them a good understanding of how you got to where you got. So um, that's why exploratory data analysis before you do any type of machine learning or predictive modeling is so key because um, there's just so much. Uh, if you if you're asked to walk back into the work that you did, you're going to want to back it up with the numbers. I've made this mistake many times where I needed, someone asked for a predictive model. I needed to build it quickly, and um, I skipped too fast past the exploratory data analysis, and questions came up about things that I couldn't answer. Let's see. Do you have any concern considering